It's Melinda from Hope When There Was None, coming on live with my very special guest, Miss Carla. And you know what? I just made a confession that I've been like stalking her on IG for a while now. But I love, and I'm going to gush again, I love the transformation that she's made from victim to victory. Oh my goodness. It's been a wonderful transition for you out of that to what you're doing now. And you're a coach, you're a relationship expert and podcaster. Is there anything you don't do? Oh my goodness. But I'm gonna
Well,
let you take it away.
I've
So
got I've got too many hats layered. I've got too many iron. I need to take a few irons out of the fire, but it's been fun.
so how did you I should have asked you before, how did this start for you? What did this look like for you, your journey?
Oh goodness. So going back about 12 years ago, I went through a very high conflict divorce, and then which went into a 4 year custody battle. And I was had been in a 15-year marriage, 17-year relationship, and what I thought was a Christian marriage, because whenever we first met, whenever I was 18 years old, he was in his pitch to me, I guess you would say, was that he was looking for a Christian girl that could help him to get back in church, because he was raised in church, but now that he was his own adult, you know, person, he wasn't. And so he had prayed that God would bring him someone to help him be the person that he knew he wasn't, but he wanted to be. And so then I was the answer to the prayer. And so from the very get go, kind of the foundation was is that this wasn't just we didn't just meet each other and we weren't just dating, but this relationship was a God thing.
Hmm.
Okay, so that was the foundation that was set, and that I was the answer to the prayer. So anytime, and then everything was like really fast and furious, and we were engaged within 5 months, and you know, yeah, I mean, it was just like bonkers, off the chart. But then whenever anytime I would start like pumping the brakes, and I would start noticing things that I did not know were called red flags or would be considered red flags at the time, because I didn't know what I didn't know. Um, Anytime I started pumping the brakes, then it wasn't that I was possibly breaking up with him or slowing down this relationship. I was going against God, because
Ooh.
I was an answer to the prayer, and this relationship was a God thing. So if I even thought about, hitting pause, not only was I, you know, ending this relationship, but I was going against God. And that was kind of the setup and the foundation for our whole entire relationship, and then marriage. It was, I was going against God if I questioned anything about this relationship. And as most people who are in an abusive relationship that is supposed to be based on faith, then a lot of times that got rolled into, well, you just don't want to be you just don't want to be submissive. You want to be large and in charge, and you're going against me,
You
and you're not.
too?
Yes, you're not wanting to be a submissive wife. And so this goes on for, years and years and years.
Hmm.
And I just resigned myself, as a woman of faith. Divorce isn't an option. At least it was like, divorce is not on the table. I am in this thing. So I just have to figure out how to make this marriage work. And then after I was in so many years, and all the praying and begging God wasn't helping, it wasn't changing anything. And reading my Bible wasn't changing anything. And serving in the church wasn't changing anything. And there was no level of submission that was enough to change my circumstances. Then I just resigned myself to, well, this is just my life, and this is as good as it gets for me.
Yeah.
And it was, I one day I was walking through the living room, and Dr. Phil was on the screen. And it said, you might be in an abusive relationship if, and let's say there were 10 bullet points on the screen. I started going down the checklist. because to me, the only thing that constituted an abusive relationship was if they were hitting you or if they were cheating on you.
Mm,
Because I call it the church checklist. When going to your pastors or elders about problems in your marriage, well, is he hitting you?
mm,
No, he wasn't hitting me. Is he cheating on you? Is there adultery? No, not that I know of. And then, well, God hates divorce.
yes.
And that was the
Right.
extent of the counsel. And so I just thought, well, that's the only things that those are the only things that count are hitting and adultery. And so whenever I was going through that checklist and seeing things that weren't physical violence or cheating, and I'm going, that's me.
Mm,
That's me. One by one. And I just stood there frozen. And then I was like, I think I literally said uh, out loud, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. The things that I think that he's doing are wrong, they really are wrong. Not just wrong, but now I can say this is abuse.
right.
I am in an abusive marriage. And so then I start looking into it, and so when I say 12 years ago I went through that high conflict divorce, it took me another 2 years after that revelation and that light bulb moment. It took me another 2 years to finally get out of that marriage and that relationship. Um, and when I say that I went through a high conflict divorce, oh Lord have mercy. I had because one of the things that I had always said, if this is the way that he treats me and he loves me, what
Mm,
is he going to do to me when he hates me?
yes.
And I found out. And I found out whenever I left. So that is the overview of how did I get here? Why is this something that I'm passionate about? That's why, because I lived it for a long time, and now I am free, and I want to sound the whistle, and I want to beat the drum, and I want to shout it from the rooftop that especially women of faith,
Yes.
um, you are not, it's not a life sentence. You are not sentenced to a life of abuse,
Right.
and you can get out, and God can honor
Oh, and I'm so glad that you said all of that, really and truly. I mean, you
it.
mirror a lot of what I was feeling in those years as
Mhm.
well. I had been over 20 plus years, so I totally get that. I do. I do. And wanting to honor God and yes, and hearing those words from my pastor's mouth. Yeah, you know what the Bible says about divorce. Yes.
Yeah.
I get that. We'll pray for you. Yeah, so I get
Hmm.
that. Oh my gosh. So, first of all, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You're doing this, but you're remarried
Yes. I am
as well.
remarried. Yes,
So,
I
for anybody out
am.
there listening, there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, and what I want to say about that is this. Um, so many times, anybody who goes through a divorce, period, but especially if you add the layer of either toxic to an abusive relationship coming out of that, you usually have two camps of people. Some people who have like written off relationships and marriage forever. Like I am done. I'm never doing this again, and they
Right.
and they resign themselves to a life of singleness. The other camp is that they immediately try to jump into the next relationship because
Mhm.
they are looking for validation. They're looking for validation that they are lovable. They are looking for validation that they are worthy and acceptable and that somebody would want them. But what that does is most of the time that leads you into your next toxic relationship
Yes,
because
ma'am.
you are so needy and wanty and graspy, and it's like you will kind of like take anybody who will say that they want you.
Right.
And there's a specific type of person who's looking for that type of person, and they're
Bingo.
typically an abusive person also. And so then you just get roped into your next abusive relationship. So my charge to anybody is Do the inner work first. It's terrible, and I just say embrace the suck.
Yes.
I hope that's okay to say. Embrace the suck. It's gonna suck. It's gonna
Mhm.
hurt. You're gonna cry.
Mhm.
You're gonna feel like you're like army crawling through the mud with electrified barbed wire, ready to get you. But
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
worth it. But it's worth it because you mentioned that I became a coach. So now I'm a relationship and divorce recovery coach. And what I work on is creating healthy boundaries. The core issue of any breakdown in any relationship is that the people in the relationship do not know or understand or have not established their boundaries.
Mhm.
So I work with them on creating healthy boundaries. And then I also stress on you're not trying, getting the mindset away from trying to find your better half, and that you're not a whole, you're half of a person until you meet
Right.
Mr. or Mrs. Wonderful out there. You're looking for that better half. What I work on them is that you are a whole and complete person on your own. Christ is who makes you complete. You're
Yes.
spending all this time trying to find someone to fill that God sized hole that only Christ can fill. But you're trying to fill it with someone else, something else, food, alcohol, whatever,
Right.
whatever that is. You're trying to fill that God-sized hole. So Christ makes you whole and complete. What
Mhm.
you need to work on is becoming the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. Let me
Yes.
say that again. Work on becoming the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. That way, anybody that comes along, so now you've got your boundaries in place. You know what you're willing to accept, what you're not willing to accept, what your deal breakers are. You've got your foundation set. You are solid in your self confidence that you are a child of the king,
Mhm.
and that you are royalty. And
Yeah. Yes.
there is certain criteria to hang out with royalty, and anybody who comes along is going to be a compliment to who you are and the person that you're becoming, as opposed to, oh, now you complete me. No, I'm complete.
Right.
You're going to you compliment me and who I am and who God created me to be. And that's going to be a good match. And if they're not there, you have your boundaries that you can hold whenever they start pushing those boundaries or breaking those boundaries.
Right.
It is a whole lot more clear and obvious, and you say, no, these are my standards, these are my boundaries, and if you're not willing to honor them, then you're not honoring me, and I'm not willing to be in relationship who's not going to honor me.
Yes. Yeah. Now I've got to ask you two questions.
Sure.
First one, did you come from a history where there was some sort of abuse? Did you see that generationally?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. My parents have been happily married for almost 60 years. I think they're at 58 years. They are the cutest thing. They still hold hands. And
Oh,
and I came from a good, solid Christian home, no abuse, loving, and that's why it wasn't even on my radar.
gotcha.
When I said I didn't know what I didn't know,
Mhm.
that wasn't even on my radar. I just assumed that since I was coming from this loving Christian home where my mom and dad loved each other and loved me and my sisters, that was just naturally going to happen for me. And that since I was a Christian, then God was going to bring me my
Mm.
perfect mate. And it was just going to be easy peasy. And so that wasn't even on my radar. No, I'm not. This is not a generational thing for me.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay. Yeah, because we do see that sometimes. Oh my goodness.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Wow. Okay. And how was your family once they found out what was going on? Or did you ever let them know?
Yes, they were aware.
Okay.
So my family just loved me through it. They loved me and supported me. And when I was ready, they were there. And my dad is the one who drove me to the local women's crisis center and he sat with me to with an I sat down with an advocate. She helped me fill out the paperwork for a protective order,
Mm.
how to get that filed. She walked me through an exit plan, and then my dad and I left there, and we started executing the exit plan. And so they were very supportive, and they just let me come to the conclusion on my own because they knew that if they were smart enough to know that anytime they started um, mentioning anything and saying we don't like, we're seeing some issues here, then my ex would isolate me, and so
Okay.
they wouldn't have access to me. So they learned the pattern that if we speak up and we start saying anything, then we lose access to her, and they wanted to at least be able to stay in relationship with me so they could keep eyes on me.
Oh, they're very smart with doing that because I know sometimes as well, some of the
Mm,
victims might become very protective of their abuser. A little
yeah.
bit different scenario, but yes, wow, they
Mhm.
are very smart. What awesome parents.
Yes,
They're
they are.
very awesome and patient and awesome. That is wonderful. And how are your kids? If you
My
can.
kids are good. So my boys are young men. They're adults now. They're 23 and 20, and they're both thriving in their own way. I'm telling you, they are polar opposite, but they love each other, and they are coming into their own as young men. One has does not have any relationship with his father because whenever a lot of times when you're dealing in an abusive relationship, and of course, I am not diagnosing anyone, or and my ex doesn't have an official diagnosis, but if I had to be an armchair expert in this category, I would say that there is some narcissistic tendencies in my ex, and in those, and whenever you're dealing with that, a lot of times, if you have a narcissistic parent, they typically have a black sheep and they have a golden child.
Yeah.
My oldest son was the black sheep. My younger son was the golden child in that situation. And so
Mm.
my older son has set boundaries for himself and determined that for his own personal mental health, it is not in his best interest to be in relationship with his dad.
Oh, good
And
for him.
so that's what he has decided for himself. My younger son, um, he his relationship with his dad is not as contentious,
Mm.
and so he does keep that door open to have some communication, major holidays and things like that. And so because he does want to have a relationship with his dad, and I honor both of those. They both have the right to decide. They're adults, and they have the right to decide to what extent they want to have a relationship. And hopefully, I have taught them along the way to set healthy personal boundaries for themselves. And when they're in situations, whether it's their dad or someone else, when someone starts crossing their boundaries, they're aware of that and they stand their ground.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. And what does your relationship look like now with your new husband?
With my new husband, it's just
Was the beginning scary? Were you worried that maybe you'd drop back into another toxic relationship, or were you very confident?
I what I was afraid of, it wasn't that I was afraid that I was entering into another toxic relationship because I had done the deep dive work and I was very clear with him as to what I wanted in a relationship and what I was willing to accept and what I wasn't.
Mhm.
Um, what I had to overcome was I had that baggage and that trigger of I had never been in a relationship, whether it was with my ex or someone else, that after we got after we were in the beginning, I was like, it's the love bombing, like, oh, you're so wonderful, and you're so great, and you're all of these, you're all of the things.
Mhm.
And then since I had that in that toxic relationship cycle, what happens is you're great in the beginning, and then after a little bit they determine that you're not really all that you said you were. You're not everything that you're cracked up to be, and now they know the real you,
Mm,
that type of thing.
right.
And so for me, it was kind of waiting for the tide to turn or the shoe to drop. Like, am I going to get into this, and am I going to open up my heart, and then I'm going to get that rejection of
Mm,
like, you're not, you're not what I thought you were. You're not who I believed you to be. And now that I've really gotten to know you, you're not that great. And so I just kind of kept waiting, waiting for that time.
mm,
um, but it's just been, the question I got asked the most in the beginning is, how did I learn to trust
mm.
again? And first of all, my husband, his name is Mike. What he, sorry, I just know, I have a really blue tongue because I have,
I didn't notice until just now.
sorry, I had a cough drop in. Sorry, this is the real me. This is me.
That's what we're all
I
about.
was like, so if I have a blue tongue and blue teeth, people, this is what we're dealing with. I had a cough drop in, but
And it won't be edited out. So
and I
this
won't be edited out. It's fine. It's fine. What you see is what you get. Um, so I was always asked, how did you learn to trust again?
I'm sorry.
And what I know, sorry, just total distraction. And he just kept proving himself to be trustworthy. He wasn't lying to me.
Mm,
He wasn't manipulating me. And so I wasn't ever catching him in a lie, or finding a reason not to trust him. He
mm,
was a good, solid human being, and that's just what he was. And so I was able to trust him because he was a trustworthy person. But what we have a tendency to do is, whenever we do we repeat those cycles of abusive relationships or toxic relationships, we continue to get in relationship with the same type of person.
right.
So this is a different type of relationship because I am with a different type of person, and I'm with a type of person that was in accordance to the boundaries that I had set for myself. And so then that was the type of person that I attracted. Because when you are a self confident person who knows what you want and knows what you don't want, you have a tendency to repel people who are going to try to manipulate you because they can tell you're not easily manipulated. And so you have a tendency to repel those people. And so the people that end up getting into your inner circle, they've met the requirements. And a quote that I love by Maya Angelou is, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time.
Ooh.
But we have a tendency, she's like, when they tell you who they are, if they say, I'm no good for you, then you agree with them and you go, okay, you're no good for, I believe you when you say that you're no good for me. So but what we do is like, but we as women in particular, we're like, no, I see the good in you. I can help you. I will be there. I believe in you, and I will love you enough for both of us until you believe in yourself. We're constantly that nurturer trying to,
Yes.
I'm not going to
Fix.
desert you. And
Right.
it's typically people that have the story of like they've had a bad childhood, or they've been abandoned in some sort of way, or everybody always leaves them and disappoints
Mm.
them, and then you're like, I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to disappoint you. Like, I'm in this thing, and then you're
And then you are,
in,
you're
you're
stuck.
in
Yep.
it.
You're in.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That rescuer. Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I could fix him or her, because
Yeah.
sometimes it's not just an intimate partner. It could be a friend,
Oh
coworker.
yeah.
It's you could slide into it. Your mom, your dad. It could be
Mhm.
any number of those.
Yeah.
Wow, wow. So you also have your was it parenting circle? Am I saying that? Was that right?
Parenting Time Center.
Parenting time
Is that
center.
what you're
That's what
talking
it
about?
is. That's what I
Hmm.
am talking about. Yeah. So you're involved in that too. So what exactly is that for your area? Is this something that's around the nation or just specific to your area?
It's specific to my area, so it's a nonprofit organization, and we do supervised visitations, safe exchanges, cooperative parenting classes, and nurturing parenting classes. And the way I came to know about Parenting Time Center is that through my custody battle, we were court ordered to use their services, and so at one point at the end of my custody battle, my ex was court ordered to have supervised visits with our two children because he had demonstrated over and over again that he should not be alone
Mm.
with the children because bad things would happen. But this is what I will say. So, throughout that 4 year court battle, physical abuse had been substantiated against each one of the children, one time each.
Mm.
And essentially, what was determined is that yes, there was physical abuse, physical violence against each one of them, but it wasn't bad enough.
Mm.
It wasn't bad enough for us to do anything beyond document it. So there was no repercussions as far as custody or visitation was concerned. Essentially, it was just documented. So the majority of what he did over that time period was verbal and emotional, which is extremely difficult to document. How
Right.
do you document verbal abuse? How do you document psychological, um, emotional abuse? And what would happen is they would go on their visits with him over the weekend. Things would not go well. They would come home and tell me about it, about
Hmm.
the verbal abuse, about the emotional abuse. But then I can't testify to that because that's hearsay.
Right.
I didn't firsthand witness it. So we're working with a guardian ad litem and we're just going in this circle over and over and over again until finally there was a big enough incident that the guardian ad litem requested that the court uh, give us supervised visitation. In that supervised visitation at Parenting Time Center, he continued to believe so he continued to be verbally and emotionally abusive to
Mm.
certain degrees. First visit, he's just like not engaging, doesn't want to be there. Second visit, he starts pushing the boundaries with
Yeah.
the, of what can be said, what can be said, how he can behave, how he can't behave. The supervisor didn't intervene because she said my boys were using the coping skills that they had been taught by their behavioral specialists,
Oh,
and they were redirecting him and getting that situation under control themselves. And so
good boys.
she wanted them to be able to practice those skills in a controlled environment.
Okay.
Third visit, he's not having it and it goes off the rails. The visit is ended about 10 minutes into an hour
Mm.
visit, but that documentation of the verbal and emotional abuse in those three visits was admissible in court.
Awesome.
And that documentation is got what got me full legal and physical custody, and visitation was ended, and I did not. I had full legal custody. He did not. He lost all his custodial rights, and so that is why I am so passionate about Parenting Time Center and am such an advocate and work part time for them.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And did any of that the legal battle part of it, was any of that
Hmm.
I was frustrated myself. How did that look for you? Because I was actually 4 years out too. I didn't get I left
Hmm.
in 2009, divorced and started that process 2009. By 2012, I finally got divorced. So,
Mm.
I hear ya, sister. Yes.
Yeah, the that process was extremely frustrating, and if it weren't for my faith, and if it weren't for the work that I was doing, and if it weren't for the support of my family, there is no doubt in my mind that I would have had a full blown nervous breakdown
Mm.
because it was. I mean, it was psychological warfare every single time
Sure.
that we went in there. It was frustrating because so throughout the process, there really wasn't an entity that I did not deal with. So I'm dealing with the prosecutor's office. Of course, I have an attorney. I have a guardian ad litem. I'm dealing with DCS, um, the police department, the sheriff's department. I'm dealing with every single entity, and everybody's telling me something different.
Mhm.
Oh, well, this is what you need to do. And so
Yes, ma'am.
that is what I do. And then I'm in another incident and they're like, well, why did you do that? And I'm like, because they told me that this is the procedure, that this is what I'm supposed to do. No, 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 no. I don't know who told you that, but this
Mhm.
is what you're supposed to do. So when I finally when I got out of that and my kids were done, um, I was approached about being, our county had a domestic violence task force previously, but it had dissolved. Nobody had taken it on to champion it. And so I got asked, if I wanted to be a part of the reforming task force. So I called the prosecutor's office and I was like, I hear you're starting a new domestic violence task force. I would like to be a part of it. And to which they say, well, we would like to, but the prosecutor's office just doesn't have the bandwidth to like get this up and running. Would
Mhm.
you want to spearhead starting
Awesome.
a task force? And I was like, I've never even been on a task force. I don't know anything about it. And I said, well, let me get back with you. So I called my attorney because she had been on the previous one. And I said, they want me to spearhead the task force. Can I do this? And she said, yeah, you can do this.
Ah,
So I went back to them and I said, well, I don't know anything about running a task force or starting one, but I know people who do. And so I had used our Albion Fellows Bacon Center, and it's not a bacon center. The center is named after Albion Fellows Bacon Center. I always say it, and it always sounds like it's like the Albion Fellows Bacon Center. It's not a bacon center, as lovely as that would be. It
that would
is
be
would be fabulous, but it is it is the women's shelter and crisis intervention um, that I use.
okay.
And so I contacted them and I said, if I take this on, will you partner with me and will you help me? They said, absolutely. And so, I was just like the conduit between the prosecutor's office and Albion, to get this up and running. And my goal was to get all of those entities that I had to deal with that weren't communicating with each other
Mhm.
around the same table. And that's what happened. And so we have representatives of all those different people, all those different agencies around the same table, so that we can start communicating and getting on the same page with each other. And the task force has been in existence. Oh, I've lost track of time, but let's say 5 years,
Awesome.
and it's domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. So we've got that task force going and put on events and um, just educate the community and let them know that we're a resource.
Oh, that's fabulous. And I know so many people probably even listening or that are going to be listening that I off the top of my head that are advocates themselves. There are a few, they don't have shelters in their area. So I wonder if this is something that they might be able to take it upon themselves to do. So I'm going to send this out to a few people. Awesome.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you some questions after we're done. So
All right.
awesome. So there is
Sounds
a
good.
live feed of the tunnel for anybody that's listening. And let's go through your links because I'm down here below.
Hmm.
I do have
Yep.
all your goodness. And this link tree it's got your website on there. You've got a podcast. You've got a relationship quiz. There's a discovery call that you can take
Hmm.
advantage of. So you can find her link in the comment section, but also in the description of this too. If you're listening on the podcast, you'll find that in the description.
Hmm.
But so tell me about your relationship quiz. What is that all about?
So the relationship quiz, I love it. It's sneaky because what it is, I wish I had a copy of it here in front of me, but I don't. But what it is it's actually First Corinthians chapter 13, the love
Ooh.
chapter, because this is what always happens is whenever I so many stories. I've had so many women in particular, and let's just say this: 1 in 4 women experience physical violence in their lifetime. 1 in 7 men. So we keep saying women. This is an issue for men also. I
Yeah.
don't want to negate that.
Okay.
Um, but so many, mostly who come to me are women. So they would tell me these horrific stories of things that their partner had done to them, or their husband or boyfriend. And then I mean, it's just like cringeworthy. And then they would say, but I know that he loves me. I know that he down deep, he really does love me. Or they say, but I love him.
Mm.
But I love him.
Yeah.
And so I just kept finding that so curious, because I did that too, but I love him. And it's like, so then what is love? And so so in First Corinthians, it says love. So I turn it into a quiz, and it says, let's see. So the first one is love is patient. And so I just turn it into a question. Is your partner patient with you? Yes or no? And so I just took each one. It is, and so it's covered. Is your love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy, is not jealous, it is not rude. And so I took these and put them into a question form, so that you don't even know you're measuring it up against biblical standards here. And it's just 8 yes or no questions. And at the end of it, it has a key of, yes, this person is, maybe you're, a great partner. And down to the last one basically, if you got like, if you didn't get if they didn't meet any of the criteria, it says block and delete. Just block and delete.
I like
just
that.
just go away. And so that's what the relationship quiz is. It's like, and it really does. Um, it really brings things to light whenever you really ask it in question form. Does this person really love me? Well, what's the criteria for love? And
Right.
especially what's God's standard for love? And whenever you take it out of the Bible and you don't present it as scripture,
Mm.
and you just pose it as a question, it's very powerful. It's
Wow.
very powerful.
Wow, that sounds really
And
good.
yeah. So I encourage everybody, and take the quiz, and measure the standard, and as to what, is this love or not.
Oh, I like that. That is so cool. That is really cool. Wow. Okay. That's fabulous.
Well, thank you.
So, do you have any upcoming courses? Anything? Are you going to be doing any conventions? Anything at all? Seminars?
I don't have it in the works right now. Like I said, there's so many irons in the fire. I just got done with a big fundraiser for Parenting Time Center, because, of course, I do their advocacy. I advocate for them, and I do fundraising for them, and a lot of networking on their behalf. And so we literally just got done with a big fundraiser on Sunday. So I'm kind of recouping from that. But you can always book a free call with me. And this is not some hyped up, like, sneaky sales pitch, or I'm trying to, like, get you in, rope you in, so I can get you on a high pressure sales call or anything like that. I genuinely just want to speak with you. If you have any questions, if you are like, any light bulbs are going off and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this sounds a lot like my story, or I think that I have some further questions that haven't been answered on this podcast, it really just is an opportunity to have a conversation with you. And any resources that I can direct you to, any websites, any books, any podcasts, anything that I can direct you to, I'm going to offer that. And then, after talking, if you feel like you need more and you need to go a little bit deeper, then I offer one-on-one coaching, and we can discuss what those different options are, as far as commitment and price points and stuff like that. But and if at the end of the conversation, if I don't think that you're ready for coaching, if it sounds like you really need to go through counseling and therapy first,
Mhm.
and or if I don't feel like if I don't feel like what I offer is a good fit for you, or if what I offer you're not ready for, then I'm going to tell you that. I'm
Okay.
not going to try to make me fit what you need just so that I can onboard you as one of my clients. If I don't feel like that I can serve you to the best of what you need to get the transformation that you need, then I'm just not the right person for you. And that's okay. You
Mhm.
may need to deep dive into some counseling first because that's what I did. I was, when I first got out, I wouldn't have necessarily been ready for me yet. I needed to go through the counseling. I needed to dig through that back end stuff first
Yes, ma'am.
because I say that counseling is like, and therapy is addressing maybe things in your past, or addressing the reasons that led you into being in an abusive relationship.
Right.
So maybe those character issues or emotional hurts or whatever those things may be, and maybe those stem from childhood or past experiences. So let's get that all cleaned up. And then whenever you feel like you're to a point where you kind of keep circling the same mountain over again,
Mhm.
then and you really aren't, you feel like you've address all of the things that need to be addressed. I see it as a relay race, and then like the baton is passed to the coach because then coaching is all about moving forward and it's
Right.
all about your future. And so you may not be ready for that yet. And I'll let you know that. I'll say I think you need some counseling first.
Well, I'm glad you said that because a lot of people might misconstrue that what coaches do is
Mhm.
they are that place of that counselor or therapist. But I'm glad you
Mhm.
mentioned that. Usually, unless you have those credentials, we're just that cheerleader for you afterwards, after you get that ball rolling, really and truly.
Yes.
So thank you for mentioning that. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. You've given some great golden nuggets.
Well, thank you.
Wow. Thank you so very much. So you've given hope, I know, to a lot of people that are listening out there today and watching. So if you want to go ahead and give her a little bit of love, again, you can find her information in the comment section or here down below. You can write it down, but again, you can just click on that or in the show notes. So Carla, thank you so much again. I hope you have a great rest of your day, whoever's watching. And thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Mwah! Stay safe.
Mwah.
Bye bye.